Chapter 15, Part 2. So in the first part, we looked at selection. Selection of the social situations that we put ourselves in, and selection of the people that we choose to connect with. Okay, so once we have done that, we move to evocation. Once we're in those situations, there we go. Once we are in those situations, we're looking at the ways in which features of personality elicit reactions from others. So once you choose that partner, what are the emotions or reactions that their personality brings out in us? And what are the emotions and reactions that our personality brings out in them? So, for example, hyperactive children in the classroom. The children are hyperactive and they tend to evoke predictable social responses of hostility and power struggles in others. Just behaving in that way and having that sort of personality evokes hostility and frustration and power struggles in other people. Perhaps you know somebody who would be high in honesty and humility. I'm thinking of someone right now. Definitely she would score very high on that, and she tends to evoke trustworthy expectations in others. Okay, so just her personality being this tends to evoke other people trusting her, liking her, really thinking that she has a positive, honest disposition. What about aggressive people? Aggressive people evoke hostility from others, not surprisingly. Aggressive people also expect that others will be hostile towards them. Okay, so think of an aggressive person, right? So they'll go into situations and they act hostile, right? Or they act aggressively, but they also have the expectation that other people are going to be aggressive back. Okay, that is called hostile attribution bias, the tendency to infer a hostile intent on the part of others in the face of uncertain behavior from them. This we've given examples to before, right? So when you're going down the hallway or you're walking through the mall or whatever and somebody bumps into you, somebody with hostile attribution bias would assume that the person did it on purpose, or they're just, they did it on purpose. They weren't watching where they were going, or maybe they're, I don't know, being a jerk somehow. Somebody say, I don't know, you're in a different social situation and somebody smiles at you. Well, at the aggressive person. Now, the aggressive person might, instead of seeing it as a friendly smile, they might see it as a smirk. Like they're, razzing them somehow or thinking something negative about them. They just assume that other people are going to be hostile at them, right? Thus, they treat others aggressively. People treated aggressively tend to aggress back. So when they treat people aggressively, and then because they do that, the reaction tends to be a little bit more aggressive. So their suspicion is confirmed. But they sort of did it themselves, right? But this constant confirmation that, yes, they were being a jerk because of the way they responded, perpetuates the bias. 2 pieces of research. Reactive aggression is more closely associated with HAB than proactive or premeditated aggression. Okay, so reactive aggression, you're reacting to ambiguous situations. You're reacting to them bumping into you. You're reacting to them smiling at you. That is associated with HAB. HAB is associated with increased angry rumination over time. Please know what rumination is. To ruminate. I'll end up telling you anyways. So rumination is going over things in your mind over and over and over, okay? So people who have a high degree of hostile attribution bias will go over and over and over again that situation that made them angry, which was frustrating, or that person who bumped into them. They'll just go over the situation. This tends to lead to increased hostile attribution bias because you're playing it over and over in your head, probably getting more angry. Evocation of anger and upset in couples. This can happen in two ways. Okay, so the first, perform actions that cause emotional response in a partner. So if you're dominating or criticizing or being condescending or whatnot, you're going to be evoking, your personality is evoking upset in your partner. Okay, so that's sort of the more obvious one. The second one is elicit actions from another that upset the original elicitor. So if you're constantly being condescending towards your partner and you're always putting them down, saying things to upset them and make them feel bad, and then their confidence is low, so then you get angry with them because they never speak up for themselves when you're the one who sort of beat them down in the first place. Evocation, upset in couples research study. So, study by Boos, 1991, role of personality on evocation of anger and upset in straight married couples. They assess personality characteristics of husbands and wives through 3 data sources. There was a self-report, a spouse report, and then independent reports from 2 interviewers. Then they did a statistic analysis to determine which personality traits predicted their partner would become upset. So for males, high dominance, upset partners by being condescending. Low conscientiousness, husbands had extramarital affairs. And low agreeableness, condescending, neglecting, abusing, cheating, alcohol. Okay, so for males, what upset their wives the most was their males' characteristics of high dominance, low conscientiousness, and low agreeableness. The strongest predictors were low agreeableness and emotional instability. Link between personality and conflict starts to show up in early adolescence. So when they turn into teenagers, low agreeableness, that's what that means. So teenagers that are low in agreeableness, imagine them like grade 9, grade 10, they tend to evoke more conflict and be more victimized by their peers. Whereas more agreeable teenagers tend to use more effective conflict resolution skills and they evoke more trust. So if they're more agreeable, they're evoking more trust and positive sort of vibes from their friends, right? When they're low in agreeableness, they're going to be evoking more conflict, evoking more negative feelings from their peers, and they're likely to be victimized by their peers. Evocation through expectancy confirmation. We sort of talked about this a little bit with the hostile attribution bias. So people's beliefs about personality characteristics of others cause them to evoke those characteristics. And when then they evoke them, then the person sees them, and then it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. A study by Snyder and Swan told people they were going to be dealing with hostile, aggressive people and then introduced them to the individuals. Okay, so imagine a situation where they've got a group of, they didn't say how many people, okay, let's say 20 people. And they said, okay, you're going to be meeting these people. You're going to have to work with them on something. They tend to be hostile. They tend to be aggressive. So heads up, it's kind of their personality type. Then they went in and started working with them. And the result was people's belief led them to behave in an aggressive manner towards the unsuspecting target because the people they went in to work with didn't know that this was happening, right? All they know is that the group of people come in and they're acting hostile and aggressive towards them. Next, the target's behavior was examined. And what they found is that the targets, the people who didn't know, they behaved in a more aggressive manner than they usually would, confirming the initial beliefs. So they behave more aggressively because they felt that from the other people. Everyday life impact, we often hear about others before we meet them. That may have an effect on our own behavior, which evokes confirming behavior from them, right? So we do this all the time. You're about to meet somebody or you're going somewhere and like, oh, what are they like? Or, hey, I met somebody, or these people that we're going to see. They're super, super nice. They're super friendly and they're really funny. We're going to have a great time. So you go into that situation and you believe that that's sort of what you carry into that situation. You're more likely to find that. And then the opposite of true, right? It also talks about stigmas and stereotypes about groups of people. If you go into a situation, a social situation, and you are carrying in a stereotype that you have about that group, a negative stereotype, then you're more likely to behave in ways that's going to evoke negative feelings from them. And we are at 11 minutes, so we're going to go right into manipulation, social influence. So we've chosen the situation, we've chosen our partners, we now have our social world. We get into our social world, and we talked about how we draw out the feelings from other people, and they draw feelings out from us. And then finally, the third step is manipulation. How we work with the people in our lives to get them to do the things that we want or get situations to go in our direction. Personalities linked to the way we try to influence or manipulate others. Ways in which we intentionally alter, change, or exploit others. Malicious intent is not necessarily implied, okay? Kind of naturally sounds negative, but we're trying to talk about the way that we work with our environments. How do we do that? And how does our personality, how we work the environment shows our personality type, okay? The process of manipulation can be examined from two perspectives within personalities. Are some individuals more consistently manipulative than others? And given that all people do attempt to influence others, it's just the way we interact. Do stable personality characteristics predict the tactics that we're going to use? So we had a fun activity on the board where we talked about, like, how do you get people to do things? What is your style, right? If you are trying to, we had so many good examples in class. If you're trying to get somebody to switch a shift with you at work, right? How do you do that? Anyways, we'll come back to that. There is a taxonomy of 11 tactics of manipulation that was developed by Boos. Okay, so if you want to come out with 11 tactics of manipulation, the way you're going to do this, you're identifying 11 ways people tend to do things. So where do they get these 11 ways? They have nominations, acts of violence. We are interested in something. Please write as many things people do to. How do you get people to do things when you see them? You can say, okay, they force people to do things, or they yell at them, or they kind of make them feel good, so they want to do things. So anyways, they had 1,000 people write all the ways that they get people to do things. Then you do a factor analysis of these reports. And when you do the factor analysis, it means that you're going to take those 1,000 different ideas of manipulation and all the ones that are kind of the same, they're kind of around charming, right? That becomes a factor. Or around yelling at them or making them feel like they have to do it. So you might label that coercion. So they come out with these 11 tactics of manipulation. Oh, here's the sentence. We're interested in the things people do to influence others. Please think of your mother, partner, friend. How do you get them to do something? What do you do? This is the actual test. And it's divided up into chunks, which you'll see. But this is the actual test, and so you're supposed to rate it. I compliment them so that they will do it. And then you give it a score from 1 to 7. If you are very likely to use that tactic, then give it a 1. If you're somewhat forced, 7 is unlikely. And then you can add up your score and see where you are. So for example, these are the 11 tactics that came out of it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. So the top 4 tend to be, or those are the ones that are identified charming. The next 4 is silent treatment. That's the way it works, right? So charm, you try to be loving when you get them to do it. You smile, kind of make them feel good, make them want to help you. Silent treatment, don't respond until they do it. Silently aggressive. Coercion, you yell at them, intimidate them until they do it. Reason, explain why I want them to do it. Regression, you whine until they do, oh, come on, right? And then self-abasement, you act submissive so they'll do it. And then these other 4 are in the text. Okay, responsibility, evocation, you get them to make a commitment to doing it, get them to say that they're going to do it. Hardball, hit them so they'll do it. Pleasure, anyways, I can't read all those. Yeah, so which one would you be if you were going to choose some of those? Okay. I would have to say for myself, I would say charm and reason. Those would be my go-tos. Another style, Machiavellian, the Machiavellian personality. So we hear this word, right? Machiavellian, we hear a lot in psych, actually. And where it comes from is, it was a book that was written on strategies to manipulate others. Okay, so this guy writes this book. What are the best ways to manipulate others? Basically with having no conscience or morals at all. It's using people as tools to get what you want, regardless of anything else. So this is the questionnaire that they would say give. So the best way to handle people is to tell them what they want to hear. Yes, a Mac would say. Anyone who completely trusts anyone else is asking for trouble. Yes. Honesty is the best policy in all cases. Well, that would be no. Never tell anyone the reason you did something unless it's useful to do so. The answer would be yes. Okay, so these are just questions that kind of give you an idea. The biggest difference between most criminals and other people is that criminals are stupid enough to get caught. So they would say yes to that. Okay, so they did a study, of course, on people who score high on Machiavelli, high max versus low max, right? People who scored low on this. And what did they find? High max cynical worldview, they tend to evoke specific reactions from others, such as anger and retaliation for having been exploited. Exploitive social strategies. They talk about a couple of studies there where people who were scored high, they were quick to betray others. In a situation where they had the opportunity to steal, they did. 81% stole the money, whereas 24% did not steal the money if they were low mac. Another study talked about how they're more believable liars. So high max maintain greater eye contact. They're just fantastic at lying. And fewer of them confessed to the situation, right? Versus low max, people who are low max tend to be trusting and empathetic. They believe things are clearly right or wrong. They believe that human nature is basically good as opposed to cynical worldview. They tend to use a cooperation strategy, more of a tit for tat sort of thing. What does the research say about sex differences or personality differences in tactics of manipulation? So sex differences, with the exception of crying, men and women are similar in tactics of manipulation. Okay, that is a great test question. So please remember that men and women are similar in terms of manipulation. Don't assume that men use coercion more than women because you think men would. The research says they are similar, okay? With the exception of crying. Women tend to use crying more to manipulate situations. People who are high in dominance use coercion, threatening and demanding, and responsibility invocation. So that's high dominance. Males and females are equal on this. People who are low in dominance, low dominance, use self-abasement and hardball. Again, men and women are similar on this tactic as well. So they use low abasement, so they're crying, or they use hardball, they're deceiving or lying. Highly agreeable people tend to use pleasure induction and reason. Okay, they show how fun it's going to be. They point out the benefits. Disagreeable people tend to use coercion. Okay, threaten, criticize, yell, silent treatment. Disagreeable tends to be associated with all sorts of negative strategies and negative characteristics and negative life outcomes. Conscientious, you remember that definition? How did that sneak past? They tend to use reason, logical explanations, and underlying rationale. And then emotionally unstable, you can imagine them pouting and sulking and whining and crying. So they use a whole bunch of different ones, but the most common one is regression. The point here is that personality dispositions are not passive. Personality has profound implications for the tactics people use to manipulate others. Okay? Your personality directs the type of manipulation and the style you have for getting people to do what you want. Panning back, review, 3 mechanisms of social interaction. I really like this diagram. I think it shows things very clearly. So personality, I'm sure coming into this, everyone knows that your personality has an effect on your social environment. What we've learned in this chapter is that personality does have an effect on social environment, but it's a two-way, right? Social environment has an effect on personality as well. And the 3 mechanisms in the middle, selection, evocation, and manipulation, they're all part of what creates your social environment, right? And creates the feelings that you have as everything is interacting together. Personality profoundly affects a person's social environment by the 3 processes of selection, evocation, and manipulation. All right. And there we go. That is the end of chapter 15, and I will see you in the next video.